And I'm bringing this session live for our clients on employee-sponsored visa. So I'm going to be demonstrating a presentation as well on the 482 employee-sponsored visas and 186. I'll be talking about some information about 186. And this session will be streaming live. And after this, you can also post some questions during the session. Also, you can post your questions. I will be attending to all the sessions, attending to all the questions on the Facebook and LinkedIn and the YouTube channel as well. So please feel free to ask any questions related to employer-sponsored visa. You may ask questions related to other visas as well, skilled visas or state nominations or any other visa, and I'll be happy to help in that as well. So I'm going to be sharing my screen. Okay. Okay. Okay, so hello everyone, this is Gunjan and I'm a registered migration agent. This presentation is about the TSS 482 visa, the temporary skill shortage visa. I'll also be talking about the 186 direct entry. I will also be covering the latest 186, the recent transitional changes for the 186 and the 482, that which clients and which applicants are eligible for the transitional stream. Due to COVID, the department introduced some transitional streams. If you're watching, please feel free to inform your friends and colleagues about the session as well, so they also can get information about this visa. You can get in touch with us in our, we have got various branches of Aussizz in most of the suburbs. So you can contact us directly into our offices as well. Okay, so in general, when we talk about the 482 visa, what is a 482 visa? Generally, I'm asked this kind of questions that what is a 482 visa? Is it a permanent residency or is it a temporary residency? What is this kind of a visa? So what 482 visa does is it enables employers to address labor shortages. So the department basically introduced this visa to fulfill the shortage, the labor shortage in Australia. What that means is that if the employer is not able to find a skilled person in the market, so they are finding a skilled migrant, because of the reason that they're not able to find a local labor in the market. So it facilitates employment of foreign workers to address temporary skill shortages while ensuring that Australian workers get priority. Now, I'll explain in later slides that what do they mean by the Australian workers get priority, because of the fact if the work is not being offered to an Australian worker, if they're not able to do a labor market testing, if they're not able to find a person in the local labor market testing, so why they are offering the job to the other migrant and not the Australian worker. So the TSS visa holder with the 482 can work in Australia in their nominated occupation. And because it's a temporary visa, obviously every applicant and every migrant are looking towards permanent residency. So this 482 visa may lead to a permanent residency in most of the cases if the occupation is in a short-term or a medium-term list. Short-term wise, why I say short-term is because of the transitional arrangements that the department introduced. But mostly the occupation may have to be in a medium-term list if you are on a 482 nominated visa. Okay. Now, this is just an overview. So I've listed the title here that this is the overview. The business can sponsor someone for this visa if they cannot find an Australian citizen, as I mentioned. The business must be a sponsor or an overseas to sponsor you under the TSS visa. The applicants can be on a bridging visa A, B, or C. For example, if you have lodged your 485, the temporary graduate visa in the post-study stream or the temporary graduate stream, and if your employer is happy to sponsor you, and if you are eligible to apply the employer-sponsored visa, even if you're holding a bridging visa A, you may be eligible to sponsor to be sponsored on a bridging visa A. However, if you are on a bridging visa A and if you apply for a 482 visa, you may get a bridging visa C and you may not get a bridging visa A again. So keep in mind that these bridging visas, while you're applying for any visa, please keep in mind which visa you're on and whether you are holding an eligible visa or not. If you're unlawful, if your visa has been refused or cancelled, if you're Section 48 barred, please make sure to check whether you're eligible for lodging an onshore 482 visa. If you're not eligible to lodge an onshore 482 visa, you may lodge an offshore. You may have to depart the country and come back on an eligible visa. From 18th March 2018, the 457 was abolished. So as a lot of people know that 482 was renamed and the 457 was renamed and now it's called 482. However, there have been some people who have been privileged because they came on 457 and then they got stuck due to COVID, or they lost their job, or they lost their hours. So there have been some COVID concessions. Now, the 482 TSS visa is comprised of short-term, medium-term, and labor agreement. Everybody is aware of the short-term list and medium-term list. So basically, this department divided all these occupations into short-term and medium-term and labor market, mainly because of the fact that they think that these are the highly skilled occupations. And in the medium term, if their occupation falls under medium term, you basically can apply for any visa, 189, which is a skilled independent visa. Though there haven't been a lot of invitations coming on 189, however, the department in the recent, the financial review, they mentioned that they may have more quota for the 189 and 190 state nominations. So if your occupation is falling under short term, medium term, you still apply for 482 visa. The difference is that if the occupation is in a short term, you can only apply for a 2 years visa and plus another 2 years visa. If your occupation is in a medium term, you can apply for 2, 3, or 4 years visa. So that's basically the main difference. The labor agreement stream is basically, this is an agreement between the regional areas and the department. So what does a labor agreement means is that the Department of Home Affairs had an agreement with the regional areas that these regional areas, that these are the skill shortages. So for example, Western Australia, the Western Australia regional areas, so the department will consider that, okay, these are the occupations that are in skill shortage, and we approve this region to basically, even if you're a truck driver, so even there are some regions who have truck drivers in the list as well. So if a region is DAMA approved, if they have a labor agreement in place and it's got a DAMA agreement in place, so that company can sponsor a truck driver. So just as an example, or a childcare worker or aged care workers, things like that. So what does the TSS visa involves? What are the steps? For example, everybody knows that the Victorian state nomination, it comprises of an EOI, then you lodge a nomination, and then you lodge a visa. So similarly, even TSS visas, they have steps involved. Sponsorship, nomination, and visa. So when we talk about 482 sponsorship, what it means is the company is the sponsor. So when we say the company is the sponsor, that means that the company has to be approved as a sponsor and the company has to be eligible as a sponsor. So it comprises of a lot of documentation as well. The sponsorship is basically an approval from the department showing that the company exists. There's a lease agreement. The company is lawfully operating in Australia. The company is doing his tax returns. The company actually basically exists to sponsor, and it's running successfully. How you show the company is running successfully is by their profit and loss statements. The company is generating income, they're paying their taxes, the business activity statements. So step one, as it says, a sponsorship application by the employer. The employer needs to be lawfully active operating in the business. The part two is the application is the nomination application. I'll talk about the nomination application in detail in my next slides. What it means is that the position is filled by the company. So for example, I'll take some examples so it's easier for everybody to understand. So let's say like a developer programmer, there's an IT company who is applying as a sponsorship approval, and they're nominating a position of a developer programmer. So that comes the nomination part. So second stage is the nomination, that the company is trying to fill the position of a developer programmer, and they try to hire an Australian worker, and the position genuinely exists in the business. So step 3 is the visa application. So this visa application is after the nomination. You don't need to wait for the sponsorship and nomination to be approved to lodge the visa. All 3 can be lodged simultaneously. When I say simultaneously, that means that you can lodge the sponsorship, and then you can lodge the nomination, and then you can lodge the visa. However, preferably that you may wait for the nomination approval to lodge the visa, because nomination is a very critical stage of the whole 482 application. So you may wait for the nomination. Depends on each circumstances. Sometimes clients don't have the visa left for enough time. So let's say, for example, if a client's visa is expiring in August, and you lodge the sponsorship, lodge the nomination, and you have been waiting for the nomination approval, because the nominations are taking some time. Unless your application, your occupation is in a primary PMSOL list, the application process is taking some time. So the nomination may take a while. So you don't need to wait for the nomination. The application is strong enough. You think there are high chances of success. You may proceed and lodge the visa application. The 482 visa application, like I said, it depends on the short term or medium term. It doesn't matter, but it still can be lodged simultaneously. I'll take some questions after a few slides. So please, you may keep asking questions. I'll scroll down the questions in after my slides as well. Okay. Now let's talk about this. Sorry, I think my slides. Okay, so medium and long-term visa. So when the occupation is a medium term, when the occupation is in a medium term, it means that you will get your permanent residency. You may get your permanent residency after 3 years. So let's say, for example, you lodge the 482 visa for 3 years. So after 3 years, you can lodge a TRT, a 186 transition stream. What it means is that you are transitioning from a 482 visa to a 186 visa. The eligibility for 186 TRT, which is a permanent residency, is that you must be working on a 482 visa for 3 years. So that's why I've mentioned here pathway to permanent residency after 3 years. English requirements, IELTS 5 or equivalent unless exempted. There are some exemptions for English. However, it is recommended, I'll just do my full screen, okay. However, it is recommended that you get IELTS 5. The higher the better, because you may have options of applying for the independent skilled visa, and 6 each is the minimum for the 189 and 190. And the IELTS is valid for 3 years for the migration purpose. So 3 years from the date you receive your results for the English test. So the higher the score, the better. Everybody knows that with 7 each, you get 10 points, and with superior English, you get 20 points for skilled migration. 2 years of relevant work experience required. So to lodge the 482 visa, the minimum work experience required is 2 years. Now, this is generally 2 years, which may be after the qualification, which may be before the qualification, depends on the nominated occupation. So this is the general information, and you can contact us for your case, particular case. So then we may be able to advise you that how many number of years you need for work experience and how much before or after qualification. So there's no age limit for the 482. So if you're more than 50, 55 and your employer is happy to sponsor you, you may be eligible to lodge the 482 visa. You need to meet the health and character requirements. So health checks, for example, if you're facing major health issues, and you have you own the cost to the community, Australian community, is really high, then there may be some issues. However, there are health waivers available as well. You need to go through medical test, not at the time of application, but during the course of the application or before the application has to be decided by the Department of Home Affairs. The character requirements have to be met for the 482 visa. So if you have a criminal record or you have been convicted, then there may be issues. However, there are character waivers as well. The labor market testing has to be done before the application. So what labor market testing, I'll get on to my next slides, is that, like I said, this 482 visa the department introduced for the purpose that they cannot find a local Australian resident or citizen in the market. So let's take an example of an electronics engineer. So for the purpose that the employer cannot find an electronics engineer in the market with those particular skills. Hence, they are hiring someone from outside and not Australia. The employer may hire someone from outside Australia. They may hire someone locally in Australia. It doesn't matter. And as far as the requirement is meeting of that employer and the skills that he needs, the employee has. Now, this labor market testing has to be done before lodging the application, not after lodging the application, else it has very high chances of refusal. The employer must pay the salary rate. So what it means is that the employer that is sponsoring you, they have to pay as per the market rate. Now, what is a market rate? Market rate is basically what is the salary being paid in the market. How you do the labor market and how you do the market salary rate is that, for example, if a company has an electronics engineer working in the company who has 2 to 3 years of experience and is an Australian citizen, and if that Australian citizen is being paid, let's say 75K per annum, then the temporary worker who is being sponsored on a 482 visa must be paid minimum that much amount of salary. So this is basically not to jeopardize the Australian citizen and residents. So you must be paid as a temporary worker the same amount of salary that the employer is paying to the Australian resident or citizen. If the Australian resident or citizen working as an electronics engineer has got 10 years of experience or 15 years of experience, that may not be considered an equivalent worker. So equivalent worker is somebody who has equivalent work experience and equivalent qualification as yours. They may be considered as the equivalent worker. So you must be paid salary equal to that person. If there is no Australian resident or citizen working in the company, then we need to do the market salary rate, as go to the seek.com or indeed.com and see that what other companies are paying the other employees, to see that that you are paid equal to that. Otherwise, there's very high chances of visa refusal if you're not paid that much of salary. Nomination refusal, because this is a part of the nomination application. Okay, so if your occupation is in a short-term list, what it means is, like I said, so because it's in a short-term list, you can only apply for a visa for 2 years. 2 years and plus 2 years in maximum. English requirement is the same, the overall 5. There is no permanent residency pathway unless the company falls under regional area. There is a genuine temporary entrant requirement, that an incentive to show to return, that you have go back to your country once you complete the 2 years experience. Work experience requirement is the same, 2 years relevant work experience, and there is no age limit again. You need to meet health and character requirements, market salary rate, labor market testing. For the nomination application, these are very important aspects, like the labor market testing and the market salary rate. Most of the 482 nominations are refused on the position genuineness, that why this position exists in the company, why this position has been created, if it's an existing position or if it exists before. We have to explain all the aspects of that position. I'll take 1 or 2 questions. Okay. Gibran is asking, what if an applicant is on 485? Okay, yes, thanks for the question, Gibran. So if you are holding a 485 visa, and if you are eligible to apply for the 482 or 186, you can apply. So it is an onshore and it is an offshore visa, both. So if you're on a 485 visa holding it, you can apply for the application onshore. But do you have an employer to sponsor you? Do you have minimum 2 years experience? And if your visa is expiring soon, we can look at alternate visas like training visa or state nomination. So you can contact me on the phone number and we can discuss it in detail. Okay, I may soon, Derek is asking that I may soon to apply for 482 by a company in Western Australia. Can it progress to 186 afterwards or 494 human resource advisor? Human resource advisor is in a regional list, in the ROL list. So maybe a bit tricky. I would recommend that you can apply for 494 maybe, because 494 then may lead to 191 after the 5 years. So 5 years visa, and then after 3 years, you can apply for 191. Derek, you can contact me and we can discuss it in detail, because human resource advisor, I may need to look at that. First of all, your eligibility about the application for the nomination, and then we can discuss it in detail about the company eligibility as well. Okay, I'll get on to these two questions. So stay tuned, and then I will get on to more questions about the 186 and 482. So when we talk about the 482 application, a lot of people ask me how much it's going to cost me. So the 482 visa, the company has to pay the Skilled Australians Fund levy. This is like a training contribution charge to the Department of Home Affairs, which the applicant doesn't pay. This is paid by the company. So the businesses with turnover of less than 10 million per year, they need to make an upfront annual payment of each year of 1,200. So what it means is that if your company is sponsoring you for 2 years, then they need to pay 1,200 into 2, so twice. Whether if they're sponsoring you for 3 years, then they pay 1,200 into 3. So for each year, they need to pay this amount to the Department of Home Affairs, depending on the number of years. If the turnover is more than 10 years, not 10 years, sorry, 10 million. If the business turnover is more than 10 million, then they need to pay 1,800 for each employee. So if the company is sponsoring you for 2 years on a 482 visa, and if the turnover of the company is more than 10 million, then they need to pay 1,800 into 2 years. So now each year they have to pay, depending on the turnover of the company. Okay, what's the first step? Like I discussed now I'm going to discuss a little bit in detail about the sponsorship, nomination, and visa. So the first step is about the sponsorship. The business must become an approved sponsor. So if you lodge the sponsorship, if you lodge the nomination and the sponsorship gets refused, the nomination may have very high chances of refusal because the sponsorship has not been approved. The processing time of sponsorship is not that long. The sponsorships that I have lodged, it has taken maximum 2 weeks. It has not taken more than that. So if you lodge a sponsorship, if it's a big business, you may need to wait for the sponsorship approval. Now, when you're applying for the sponsorship approval, for the sponsorship application, some clients have come to me and said that, oh, my company has already been approved as a sponsor. So can I apply for a nomination now? Now, what I need to look at is when the company has been approved as a sponsor, has the sponsorship expired? Does it need to be renewed? Because the sponsorship is valid for 5 years. And sometimes the company's sponsorship has been expired and they have not renewed it. So they may have to apply for a new sponsorship. Also, it matters that when they applied for the sponsorship, how many people they asked for. Like in the sponsorship applications, the companies have to address a question that how many people would you like to sponsor? How many people would you like to nominate? If they've just answered one and they have sponsored already more than one people, then we may have to look at reapplying for the sponsorship application for the business. So also most of the companies have their own agents in-house, the agents working in the company, but most of them, they also come to me and they also come to and say that, look, we would like to nominate this person and we would like you to have because of the confidentiality, you need to make the employer understand that all the information remains confidential as per our code of conduct. So any third party that is disclosed to the information is the Department of Home Affairs. Now, the business must be demonstrating lawful and actively operating in Australia. If they don't have a lease agreement, or it's a small home office, or if they're just working from home, it may be possible, but it's preferably if they're actively operating in a commercial areas, in a commercial lease agreement, not like a house lease agreement. If it's not like a private home office, it may be a bit difficult. This includes the ABN business registration and the business activity statements and financial statements. These are the main documents: lease agreement, business registration, the business activity statements, and profit and loss statements of at least last 2 financial years. The department also wants to see whether the business has not been going into loss. There are some restaurants, a lot of hospitality businesses, manufacturing businesses who have been going into loss in the COVID. So it may be possible still for them to sponsor. But if the business has been going into loss for like a couple of years, maybe 6-7 years, that it may be a bit tricky. So first, preferably you may wait for the sponsorship approval. Now, the documents, this is just I've listed some document list required for the sponsorship application, business activity statements, bank statements. Some companies, for example, the garage, the motor mechanics, the people who are running hospitality businesses, they can show invoices, clients, the receipts of the deliverables. More the documents, the better to be approved as a sponsor. I'll take one more question in between. RK is asking, hi man, I have a skill assessment as a chef and 3 years full-time experience. Can I apply 186? I'm not qualified chef though. So RK, if you are saying that you have a skill assessment as a chef, so that means that your skills have been assessed as a chef already. So I'm not sure why you say that you're not a qualified chef, because if you have a full skill assessment as a chef with 3 years of full-time experience, so you may be eligible to apply for 186 if you have a sponsor. So we can work towards it. And I think you may be highly qualified to be sponsored. So if you're not currently working at the moment, which is not mandatory, so you need 3 years of experience. And if you have 3 years of experience full-time and not casual, then you are eligible to apply for 186 direct entry, which is a permanent residency. So you can either email me or contact me and we can have a consultation about it. Okay. Now, following the SPS application, the employer must nominate a position. Now, what's the whole purpose of the 482 nomination is 482 visa application is that the employer is nominating a position. So when they nominate a position as a part of the business, you do labor market testing. Like I would explain my labor market testing in my next slide. The salary that needs to be paid by to the applicant, and the position genuineness. Now, position genuineness is that why the position exists in the company, whether it's an existing position, someone has resigned, or is it a newly created position? Like, let's say, for example, there's a company suddenly in need of a business analyst, and it's a retail store. Now, the big question arises that why a retail store, which may be just like maybe a perfume shop, let's say. So why a perfume shop would need a business analyst? Because at the end of the day, the business analyst is an ICT business analyst. If you see the ANSCO, the task of ANSCO, it's ICT, the Information Communication Technology Business Analyst. So it's very tricky. Even when you get a skill assessment from ACS, you need to be careful when you're applying for skill assessment, because ACS, the Australian Computing Society, which is the skill assessment authority for the IT occupations, they are very, very particular about the tasks that you have been performing for the in your employment, in the business, what kind of tasks you're performing. Okay, when we talk about the labor market testing, so the job advertisement, so labor market testing means that you have tested the market, you have tested the local labor market and tested the market and not able to find a skilled worker. So a mandatory site that the job has to be advertised is Job Active, that is mandatory. Indeed and Seek or Career One, the companies may have their internal recruitment sites, so that is also possible. The companies can also put the job advertisement on the local website, but Job Active is mandatory, and preferably one other paid website like Seek. So the job has to run for 28 days. So for example, if the company has placed the job advertisement on the 1st of, let's say, August 2022, now from 1st of August till the 29th of August, the job has to be run. So if you've hired an agent, or how it needs to be proved is that you save the job advertisement on the first day, and on the 28th day to show that the job was running for 28 days and the employer could not find the right candidate. Now, you need to keep in mind that the job should not be advertised for the purpose of hiring you. the job has to be advertised genuinely. Now, just because so the job shouldn't be in a way advertised for the purpose of keeping in mind that the company has to sponsor you. It is not allowed, because then it's not a genuinely done labor market testing. So when I talk to the employers, I specifically give this clear instructions that you need to put the job in the market, let people apply. Most of the companies, they don't find the right candidates, and it has happened a lot. So the jobs have been advertised genuinely, because maybe they're not looking for the right skills, somebody doesn't have the right communication skills, somebody does not have enough experience, or somebody doesn't have those particular skills that the company is looking for, or somebody can be overqualified, and maybe you may be the right candidate. Similarly, if this applies to all kind of employers, whether IT, engineering companies, or restaurants, or cafes, or hair salons for hairdressers, or childcare companies. So this applies to all companies. Labor market testing has to be done to all companies. How do you prove that the labor market has been completed? So what needs to, in the job advertisement, the title is very important. So let's say if the company is hiring a chef, and the job advertisement says a cook, so that job has not been advertised correctly, because you did not put the job in the market the correct way, so for people to apply for the position. So the title has to be correct. Some titles may be different. So let's say, for example, I've got a company nominating a position of an electronics engineer. So the job title can say test engineer, because an electrical engineering does testing. So it may say electrical or electronic or test engineer, and so that's fine. But the title should not be incorrectly mentioned completely. The position description must be mentioned with the detailed responsibilities that the position that you're looking for to fulfill in the company. What kind of duties are you looking for the person to do? So that is very important. The company has to be, the name has to be advertised correctly, that which company is sponsoring, which company is hiring, not sponsoring, sorry, which company is hiring for that particular position, and the suburb, or maybe the state. So if the company is located in Sydney, you should make sure that the job advertisement doesn't say Melbourne or Perth or any other city. The job advertisement must say that where the position is being advertised and where the position exists. Okay, so the hierarchy and the organization chart of the structure of the occupation is very important. So the residency status of workers should be mentioned to the organization chart. So why I'm mentioning about the organization chart is very important, because in the organization chart, I've noticed a lot of companies just put the positions in the company. So there's a director, and then there are the senior engineers working, and there are graduate engineers working. However, that is an incorrect organization chart. For this particular visa, what the department wants to see in the organization chart is a hierarchy, that what is the role, what is the job title, the residency status of the workers is very important. So if it's an Australian citizen, how many people are temporary holders, how many people are student visa holders, that is very important. So you need to make sure the organization chart is submitted correctly. Now the position description. Now these are the nomination documents. So sponsorship, we spoke about the financial documents, profit and loss, business activity statement, lease agreements. Now this is the nomination. Nomination is the labor market testing, the market salary rate, and the position description. The position description is very important. Why? Because the position description shows the jobs, the duties, the roles and responsibilities, what are the required qualifications, and what are the skills required for that position. So that is very critical. The position genuineness statement is a very, very important document to submit in the 482 employer-sponsored visas. This also covers the 186 as well. So similar to 482, even 186, the 186 application, the nomination, 482 nomination and 186 nomination, they both have to be accompanied by the position genuineness and the organization chart and the company financials as well. So why do you need that employee for the position, whether you have advertised the position? why that particular nominee is an ideal candidate for the position, how much experience the person has. So that is very important in the position genuineness, because the genuinity of the applicant is shown that how much experience that person has. So for example, if someone has got 3 years experience or 4 years experience or 2 years experience, so it is very important for them to show that this position is covered by this particular applicant because of the fact that he has these kind of skills. For example, an engineer may have particular testing skills. So that company needed those particular testing skills, and that's why he's hiring that person. This also involves that the position genuinely exists in the company. So, for example, if it's a newly created position, it may be a bit difficult because why the company suddenly needs an electronics engineer, and this position never existed for the last 10 years in the business. But it is very easily manageable to prove that this position has been created because of these reasons. So that is a part of position genuineness. Okay, now these are the very common 482 questions that I get, and I'll be covering these. I'll just take some questions before that. Okay. Hamid is asking, do we have 2 years of experience at the time of lodgement, or it can be counted? So 482 is at the time of decision. A lot of people think that the work experience for 482 has to have at the time of application, but it is at the time of decision. But I recommend that you do not lodge your application after completing 1 year of experience, because what if your file opens within those 2 years? So that may be a problematic situation. So I recommend, Hamid, that I understand that 2 years is at the time of decision, but you still need to be careful that when are you lodging your 482 visa. If we apply 482 and side by side 190 and 189, do we still get a chance of those visa grants? So all these applications are assessed on their own merits. Just because if you have applied for 482 doesn't mean that your application can be jeopardized for lodging a 482 application, because the criteria for 482 application is met. And if you have met the criteria, you may be granted the visa. If you've lodged a 190 visa, you meet the criteria, because nowhere in the regulation says that if you have lodged a 482 application, you may not be granted a 190. It's not anywhere in the regulation. So you can lodge. Your application may not be jeopardized just because you've lodged a 482 visa. Catherine is saying, I've applied for VET-Assess. So yes, VET-Assess is taking a little bit longer time. I have actually emailed them a couple of times about outcomes of the applications that I have lodged as well. They do send an email saying that the applications are taking longer than the normal processing time. However, you can contact VET-Assess. I don't think they have a contact number as such. They do have it on the website, but if you want it in writing, you can leave them an inquiry. You email them and they will reply you back. If you have any other questions related to VET-Assess, you can contact me and we can have a consultation regarding the skill assessment. If you want me to check the application, or there's anything that you think that's maybe not complete or something, then we can have a chat about it. Okay. So Abhishek is asking, if 482 nomination is approved, what is the probability of visa approval? So that's great. If your nomination has been approved, then visa 482 is make sure that you have met the English requirement. Make sure that if you fall under the mandatory skill assessment, because for 482, there are some occupations where there is a mandatory skill assessment, but if you're exempted, that's great. Passport copy, basic identity documents, character requirements, police checks from any country where you have lived for 12 months in the last 10 years for 482 visa. You must have do the medicals and just update the department. So if you haven't lodged the visa yet, you may contact us and then we can help you out with that. Okay. So I'll take some other questions. And 35 hours work 14 months, chef. 23 months, 45 hours. Okay, so if you want to calculate hours, so one casual is not counted. So either you have to be working permanent part-time, or full-time. So let's say if you have worked for 17 hours in a week, and then next week you're working 22 hours, and then next week you're working 12 hours, and then 40 hours. So that's casual work. So that is not counted for 482. I hope that answers your question. You can contact me and then we can have a chat about your eligibility. So make sure that you are lodging the right way. Apprentice mechanic work experience considered for 482 visa. If you're working as an apprentice for mechanical, I guess motor mechanic, if you're working at a skill level, so your tasks are at a skill level for a motor mechanic, then yes, you may be eligible for the 482 visa. So that's fine. That's not an issue. So if it's a full-time job, then yes, it's fine. If it's as per the fair work, then it is considered, yes, that is considered a full-time role. If it's a full-time contract. For 186, yes, 3 years work experience, full-time for 186. Yes, it's full-time, so that's fine. Full-time is acceptable. Janak is asking, do we have to work with the sponsor employer after 186 grant? If we are in Australia, can we apply as offshore candidates too? So if you are in Australia, then you are an onshore applicant. But why do you need to apply as an offshore if you are already in Australia? That is not required. If you're already in Australia, then you apply as an onshore candidate. So that's fine. Okay. I'll get on to my slides and I can take more questions. After this couple of slides, I can take more questions. Okay, so these kind of questions is what occupation code should I use when sponsoring for the 482? So you need to select the right ANSCO code. Do I need to work with only one employer? So for example, for the 482, you need 2 years of experience. A lot of people think that I have to be working with only one employer, which is incorrect. Your work experience of 2 years can be accumulated from any number of employees, 2, 3, or 4 employees, provided you have the right amount of documentation. Can I lodge my 482 from inside Australia if I hold a bridging visa? Yes, you can apply. Can I change my occupation while on a 482 visa? So if you have been sponsored as an accountant, in the same company, you cannot just switch your occupation. The employer has to renominate the position. So if he wants to sponsor you as an internal auditor now, so you have to lodge the nomination again as an employer, as an external auditor. So you can't just switch your roles once your nomination has been approved. Sumit, I might have lost your question. Okay. All right. Do you have to work with the employer after 186 granted? Okay, look, this is a very tricky question because you are morally obligated to the employer. Once the visa is granted, 2 years, you have a moral obligation to work with the employer. I do not recommend to quit your job the next day you get your permanent residency. That's not what we advise as migration agents. Okay, now these are some recent changes that people had a lot of confusion about after what happened after 1st July 2022. So the 482 visa holders who are on a short-term list and who were must have been in Australia. So if you were in Australia from 1st February 2020 to 14th December 2021, and you held a 482 visa for a short-term list for 3 years, but you have to be working with the same employer. So if you were working with the same employer for 3 years on a 482 visa, then you can directly apply for 186 TRT, even if you're on a short-term list. So let's say if you're a cook, that's in a short-term list. Usually before these rules, you were not eligible for 186 permanent residency. However, if you are on a 482 and worked for 3 years with the same employer and you fall under the transitional arrangements, then you can apply for the 186 permanent residency. The second change was people who held 457 visas. So the 482 was 457. So the 457 visa after 18th April 2017 and have occupation on a short-term list, you must have been in the country for a minimum of 12 months, and you should have been employed by the employer and in your nominated role for at least 3 years, and then you can apply for the 186 TRT. So you can apply for your permanent residency. This is the third change. People who have held or had lodged a 457 visa application prior to 18th April 2017 and who hold a 482 or a 457 at the time of applying for PR, you may be eligible again applying for the 186 permanent residency. So these are the changes that came through. Okay, so you can contact me on this details for any questions. I'll just take 2 or 3 questions here before I end my session. Can we apply outside Australia? Yes, you can apply outside Australia. So as I explained, the 482 visa and a 186 visa, the purpose of this visa is to hire people because the employers cannot find a skilled worker or an experienced worker onshore. So there is no reason why you cannot apply outside, because let's say I've got an employer who's looking for an electronics engineer with maybe just 7-8 years of experience for those particular testing skills. So if they cannot find someone here, they can hire someone from outside with a similar kind of skills. So yes, you can apply from outside. Even if you have an Australian qualification, Australian work experience, you can apply from outside Sayed. How long does it take for approval of nomination for chef? So the recent ones that I have applied, some of them have come in maybe 4 to 5 months. Some of them have come in a month. So the processing time varies a lot. If you want, I can check your application, or has it already been lodged, or if you're going to lodge, then make sure that you are lodging a decision ready application. So decision ready application means that everything is submitted in order and everything is submitted, so you don't give a chance to the case officer to ask for further documents, and everything has been done up to date, so they can just straight away take a decision. What are the chances for offshore applicant for 186 visa for accountant? 186 is the employer sponsored visa for an accountant. For you need a skill assessment plus 3 years of experience as an accountant, and qualification, bachelor's or master's of accountancy, and 3 years should be post qualification. 3 years of experience should be after your qualification. Offshore, onshore, it doesn't matter. The requirements should be met correctly. We need to look at the business turnover and nomination, position genuineness, labor market testing has to be done very properly. So a lot of factors count. When you talk about chances matter on a lot of factors about the company, financials, how long has the company been operating for, how many accountants are in the business. So it matters, Sumit, so you can contact me and we can have a chat about it in the consultation. Famous man. Okay, so can you leave your email address? I will email you some information about what is the definition of full-time, and that will help you in answering your question. So you can just message your email address, or you can WhatsApp me or message me on that number, or on the Facebook page or Facebook group or messenger, and I will inform you about what is the rule for the 186 full-time definition. For 186, is there a compulsion of having Australian employer for if working outside for more than 3 years? Is there a compulsion of having Australian employer for X? I'm pretty not sure what do you mean by employer for X if working outside Australia for more than 3 years. So you need to have an employer in Australia to sponsor you. Working outside Australia for 3 years, that's fine. If you have 3 years experience, that's fine. But you need to have an employer to sponsor you for 186 visa. I have applied for nomination since 5 months and applied for 482. Please, can you help me with this? Sure. You can contact me on my contact details, and we can have a chat about it. So you have already applied for nomination, and sure. Feel free to leave comments and questions even after this session. I will answer to these questions even after the session ends. So, right. Thank you everybody for watching this session. This session was about 482 temporary skill shortage visa, the employer sponsored visa. So You can contact us basically at any branch. We have a lot of branches in the whole Melbourne, Elizabeth, Collins, Werribee, Clayton, Hawthorne. Yeah, you can go to the website. We have a lot of branches in the city, Collins Street, Elizabeth office, Elizabeth Street, very close to Flinders Street Station. You can either walk in. We are very close to Flinders Street Station, 288 to 290 Collins Street, very close to Flinders Street. So you can either walk into our offices or get a phone consultation, Zoom consultation, or a face-to-face consultation. Thank you everybody for watching, and you can leave your questions and I will attend to those questions after the session as well. Thank you.